Thank you, Linda. Thank you. All right, we're from Austin, Texas. Austin is in the center of the state. It is one of the largest cities in the state. You may know us for things like South by Southwest, Austin city limits, a lot of things going on there. And we're going to be sharing with you our story about how we got to move from our system, of our problems, into Laserfiche, solving some of our problems, where we are now and where we're headed on that. But first, a little bit about our district. Like I said, we're in the center of the state. We border a number of other districts around Austin. We have almost 130 campuses that we serve. We have about two-thirds of a million population within our city limits, and I believe it's about 1.5 million over the greater Austin area, but they're served by other districts as well. We have about, where I'm here, okay. We have about 12,000 employees in our district. We have about 85,000 students enrolled at any point in time. About 10% of those, 8,500, are actively served in special education at that point in time. We have many things that we're proud of. We have about a third of our high schools are nationally recognized as being among the best in the nation by U.S. News and World Report. And we are, as Linda said, a Run Smarter Award, something we are also very proud of. Okay, why we adopted Laserfiche. Cari, you want to come up and join me here? We did do a lot of searching. We recognized the need as far back as maybe 20 years ago, and gradually we moved into, saying, okay, well, defining our needs and everything, and going through that process of getting information from others and building our requests for information and so forth. Cari?
Sure. So are we on the same slide, or? Let's see. I think we're like that. Okay. So I actually wasn't on the team during this time, so I'm going to kind of give you my supervisor, Mark, has added these slides and gave us a little history. So we started looking at a document management study in 2006. We hired a consulting company to help us. We found that our archived paper documents was taking up real estate. Our central offices are housed on the infamous 6th Street, which y'all may have heard of, and there's very little parking. People come in early to get parking, and documents were actually taking up parking spaces. Processes and procedures lacked continuity. Record and document management lacked cohesive mission. The disaster recovery programs didn't address potentials of loss. And this is honestly, that's a picture I took actually, what some of our executive offices looked like. So, hey, come on in, let's have a meeting, have a seat on that box over there. And mainly these type of boxes would then be taken to the warehouse with a year for destruction, which would usually be 5 to 7 years after that completion year that they were taken to the warehouse. We have a dungeon, and this is part of what was taking over the parking lot. I think the dungeon is still there with documents in it because we took Laserfiche and moved forward with active documents for the most part. We've archived in a lot of our areas. Human resources completely is paper-free, and then we're doing some student record archives. Special ed chose to go forward, which if any of you guys are in here looking at your special ed implementation, that's a really good idea because it takes a lot of resources to go back and scan things. But this is a dirty place, the dungeon. So the conclusions were that technology wasn't being fully used. It took excessive time and effort and money, and records are routinely kept beyond retention periods. It was necessary to adopt a system, and so 2008 we did a capital bond referendum. 2010 an RFP released. A decision was made after evaluating under the 2010 bullet. It was canceled. So 2011 came back, and this is bond funded in our district. So this does mean a vote. It means taxpayer dollars. 2011, a decision was made. We had a new executive director of technology, and he had been with Plano ISD. One of our associates that's also with our same VAR, DocuNav, and he was familiar with both DocuNav and Plano AISD in the use of Laserfiche, and was instrumental in that decision of bringing Laserfiche on. And then we installed it in 2011. Meanwhile, I was in another department, eagerly chomping at the bit to do some project management, and they needed me, so I came over. That's when I started. The technology department began meeting with larger groups of departments. We had about 10 in our pilot, and some of them dropped off. They just didn't attend the meetings, didn't make it, didn't see the potential. Finance, HR, and special ed stayed on. And drum roll, please, the 3 that remained: special ed, finance, human resources. To implement or not to implement? That is the question. And so, let's see, this slide is more about doorways. I'm not going to read everything to you because we have a limited amount of time, but there would be decision makers, department readiness. So doorways being, the question is to implement or not to implement. So back to that. It depends on these doorways. Your decision makers, are they ready for it? Our student records manager was not, and that would be a key person that you would think that we would go to, but they are now ready. So they've come back now and are asking us. Department readiness, do they have the resources? The state of the documents, are they, and that's one of the reasons that student records was hesitant at first. The CUME folders. Is most people in here from school districts? So you're familiar with CUME folders. Some of those documents are already electronic, some are not. So, you know, how do we do this when part are not? And then who accesses them? And then also state auditing policies. What are they requiring right now? Are they? And some auditing groups are still requiring original signatures. So we still do have to hang on to some of those. We found that in Medicaid. We followed a process of implementation directed by that CIO. He's moved on, but he did have direction and a plan. And it was basically when we threw out, you know, a blanket or a fishnet, who would like to do this beyond our 3 critical departments. And we would then, you know, meet for a kickoff presentation. We'd ask them to identify their top 25 documents, go through process reengineering, build their template, begin the workflow, and testing, and then training and follow-up. We have now scratched that plan. Here, let me go back to that. We have now scratched this plan. It's a great, I mean, we still do the process reengineering, but departments were, oh, I want to scan my memos, I want to scan my notes. And we were finally like, oh, this is crazy. We have 1 programmer. We have myself, my supervisor I mentioned, and 1 programmer. So our area is limited on resources. But we had to cut that out, that 25 documents, and just say what's critical, what's legal, what needs to be in here. And we started more or less working from the top. And those other departments, HR, finance, special ed was rolling on their own, and all inclusive of their documents, which are a lot. But the other departments, we just started letting it be driven by finance. Finance drives it. The other departments and campuses will need to comply and send their documents in that way. So we have that, but we don't do the kickoff presentation or allow them to scan any document. We started at Laserfiche, and let me know if I need to go quicker on time, with scan and retrieve, archive search, workflow approval and business processes were next, and then finally integration with other systems. We use Teleforms currently, and workflow for document management. We've set up records management, but we have not done any destruction dates yet. We're not quite there yet. And we just implemented forms. We went live with the Rio system. We were on an old licensing system that wasn't offered anymore, so we went live on a new licensing system and forms. So that, and if you have questions later about this, I definitely have some feedback. We took the direction from our CIO. I think integration with other systems is also a great place to start, but we did it this way. I think that also depends on your leadership, the size of your district, and what you can do. This is how it's currently being used. Laserfiche is being used at Austin ISD. Special ed integrates with all campuses, Medicaid and homebound. The overall use of special ed is all special ed active audit folders are stored, moved, accessed, and archived in Laserfiche. How? Through scanning, printing to Laserfiche snapshot, importing. We integrate with SEEDS, our main special ed application, which was developed in-house. Workflow processes, move documents based on enrollment data, and then documents are archived, searched, and retrieved by all of the different specialists, all the different people that would need to see them. So that's just an example of special ed. And then I won't really read through all these, but human resources, finance have a similar process. You can see how they're integrated, the overall use, and then over on the how column, human resources, there's a lot of workflow with approval process between departments, and I'm basically reading the bold in the far right how column. For finance, workflow submittal process, uses of multiple templates in the process, and software integration. So we pull all of our POs in through our financial software product into Laserfiche, and then the use of multiple templates, I'll just give you an example. American Express card statements are submitted. They were submitted through Laserfiche through scanning. We've moved that to forms, again, January 5th, and today's the 16th, so I've been gone for 1 week of this go live. But I've been monitoring that, and what I was going to tell you is that American Express, thank you, starts out on one template and then goes into another template where the finance folks further break down the account codes that they will later need to search on that. So it's very sophisticated and uses multiple templates. Okay, let's keep going here. That last part on there were other departments. When we were first throwing out that fishnet to other departments, about 24 came on. So we still need to support them. We're hoping to move them into forms, but we started that, so we can't just drop them now. The other departments using Laserfiche, and these are those 24. So just a little bit of a list, how they use it, and then the frequency. So I'll give you a chance to just look at that. And I'm going to move to the next slide. So the ones that have nothing, a blank in frequency or annual, we're going to start really hoping to move those off of licenses and into the forms tool. Our forms uses a public license, so that's helping us manage our licenses. All right. And then finally, the rest of our groups right here. Bonuses and challenges, more users are using Laserfiche, more are asking us to use it, more buy-in, more documents are stored electronically. God, if you just walk through the halls, there's so much more space. There's a lot less file cabinets, better document retention, more refined processes. Just a note on our solicitations, the procurement department, I don't know why they couldn't make a decision, but they basically, solicitations were coming in via fax, via email. They didn't have one place, maybe through department mail, and so they'd sit somewhere. They may get lost. Somebody would have to submit them over and over again. They couldn't find them. We just moved that into Laserfiche this year before the start of school and trained those users, and that's been great. They're so much more accessible. Challenges would be incomplete implementations. That we had a lot of that, and people who 6 months later are asking, well, my notes show that you needed to get us this. So to be very patient with those users, and then now let them know this is where we are now. This is what we can do for you at this timeline. So kind of to take that that priority back into our hands, and instead of in the beginning where we were really eager for them to come on, we still are, but we have to manage it a little bit better now. Non-critical documents, those were the challenges. I mentioned the memos, the notes, and then they wouldn't use it. So we monitor who's using this, okay? If somebody's never logged on, like in a year or two and we implemented them, we're not that worried about taking away their license. They can call and we can work with them later at that time. And then challenges or documents driven by different departments. Food service is so eager to implement with us, but they are just so tied into finance that they kind of got to wait till most of the stuff they want to do is already being done by finance. So they're driven by another department. These are our keys to success. Departments taking ownership. That's one of the main reasons we're here with special ed today, because this team took total ownership of this. Training, decision-making, guiding, managing, and that is a key to success. Again, I mentioned earlier, focusing on district-critical documents instead of just any old thing that somebody wants to scan. Simpler templates. Oh my God. We were working on these crazy templates, and some still will be a little crazy, because like the one that flows in from the American Express card, but really simplifying the process, refining processes prior to designing them, and starting small. And that's about what the overall picture of the district implementation looks like up until now. And Mike?
All right, special education. A lot of our offices almost looked like that, piles of paper. We had literally thousands of file cabinets spread across 130 locations of our official audit folders or eligibility folders for special education. It created a problem in terms of getting information when students, our district is rather mobile, so there's a lot of student movement between campuses within our district as well as in and out of our district. And moving folders from one location to another was a physical process. Okay, there's always inherent dangers there of losing records or losing track of them, and then temporarily, you're without records until you find them. It was very people intense, hands-on work. It was also a matter of keeping those records up to date. You're always, filing the information, hopefully you got in there, before you send off the folder. If not, having to track it down, then update the folder, and so forth. So we had a definite need to have come up with a better system. Now, in our special education program, we did develop our own document system. SEEDS stands for Special Education Electronic Document System. So all of the documents, think of it as a document generator. Everything that we needed for special education that we generate would come through there. But there are a lot of things that come into a special education audit folder have to be there that we don't generate. For example, parents may bring in reports from outside physicians, from their therapists, other types of information come in. We didn't generate it, so we don't have it in an electronic format yet. One of the other problems we had faced was with electronic signatures. We came up with some ideas. We field tested some biometric signature pads and everything, but we didn't have anything that really met all of our needs in terms of signatures at that point, because we recognized that there are sometimes parents wanted to take things home, look it over before they signed. When we looked at other methods, in terms of signing at the meeting, we just had some issues there, and we realized that a signature pad wasn't going to work for us because we were going to need to scan some stuff. The other thing, oops, here, go on. There we go. I think I went back one too far. Okay. So we had a need to move on, and we got Laserfiche, and we started a pilot in the spring of 2012. So first we had to identify those 25 critical documents. When our executive director said, 25 limit to 25 critical documents, we just kind of looked, okay, they don't know special education. We have a lot more than 25 document types, so we kind of grouped them initially. Then we had to work on our folder structures. We had to talk about security. And that's where Jimmy Ferris, our IT guru, he was able to help us with all of that part. He manages it. This is one person, and he's feeling the effects now because everyone wants to get on the bandwagon and follow us. And there's only one of him, so we keep him very busy. But we started a pilot just to test it out, and we did it at one elementary school and one middle school. And we also did a timing thing because we wanted to move forward. When we were investigating what type of ECM system was out there and how they were using it and so forth, and we finally, landed on Laserfiche. We were reaching out, seeing what districts who had an ECM system, what they were doing with it in terms of special education. Everyone we've talked to, they were using it for the inactive records. Well, I didn't want to go that route. I wanted to go the active because that's where most of the hands-on were. And if I could eliminate a lot of the handy work where you're constantly having to physically handle paper and everything, then that's going to free up a lot of staff time, which is, eventually comes down to money. You're going to save money. So that was the route we wanted to go. We had a plan, and how do we get there that quickly? Well, we decided that our plan would be that we would spread it out over 2 years. We would start by back scanning the elementary one summer. So in the summer of 2012, we would back scan all of the active students. And then at the end of that summer, the start of the 2012-13 school year, all the elementary schools were completely digital. The second summer, that following summer, 2013, we then back scanned all of the secondary folders. And that then, from then on, from the start of August 2013, we've been fully electronic in terms of our special education audit folders. We also launched an electronic signature system within SEEDS, where if they're an employee, they sign electronically. Then we print out the page for the non-employees to sign. And that then is scanned in through SEEDS to Laserfiche. At first it was going straight to Laserfiche. Now we have our SEEDS application integrating with Laserfiche and sending a lot of the information that way. But getting there, getting all those records, those active records first into the system, it involved not only, well, we had to do a time study, like I said, during our pilot to figure out how long it was going to take us. And we knew we couldn't do it in one summer. I wish we could have, but it just too intense. We scanned almost 5,000 records, student folders. There's about 500,000 records that came out of that, documents altogether that got into Laserfiche. And we also had to roll out at the same time the hardware and the software installations. So in that summer, that first summer, we were on campuses, or rather Cari's team, a lot of people she works with was on campuses installing and the software, the clients, the Laserfiche client, and the scanners and everything. Then we also had to roll out the training, and Linda's here was helping get all the trainings lined up so that all the special education staff, starting with the elementary staff first, are trained. And I'm going to turn over to Linda now, if she can talk about our summer scanning, back scanning project and training and so forth.
So here we have a picture of our Phase 1 implementation. Like Mike said, in summer 2012, the district hired SPED teachers, teacher assistants, to help us scan all of our documents. Here we've got a picture. That's a little over 800 boxes of all our audit folders that we were getting ready to scan. In hiring these teachers and teacher assistants to help us, we were looking for those people who are familiar with those 25 different document types. Because in going through these folders, when we're doing all the scanning, we're doing the training, we were doing it each student folder, but we had to go and divvy up, okay, this is an ARD, this is a notice, this is a consent. We divvied up those documents as they were scanning them. And as we finished scanning these, we took all these documents and we put these in the dungeon that Cari was talking about earlier. That is just, it was amazing with all the stuff that we had in there. So again, that fall, I created training documents. Cari and I did some classes together that the teachers would come to us and we'd have a scanning lab. We'd show them how to do all their client settings, how to get the documents into the repositories, and it was a lot of work. And so with that, at the same time, I was doing little labs for our specialists because I would have them come. I set up a lab in my office. Our specialists came to me, and then I would do little small group trainings and get them with their settings and everything and get them familiar with all the documents and how they were going to get these documents into the electronic document folder. Phase 1 was complete at the end of the fall. Okay, so special ed records were only available in the electronic format for all of our active students. As our kids' folders, the kids who were inactive, were put away either in our inactive files or at the warehouse. As these students came back to the district, we would pull those inactive folders from our filing cabinets or go to the warehouse and retrieve those folders, and our SIMS clerks then would backscan those folders into Laserfiche and then contact those teachers and say, hey, those folders are now ready for you to view in Laserfiche. And we still do some backscanning of all of our documents. Phase 2. Phase 2 was our secondary schools. So we had all of our high schools and middle schools bring us their folders over to our Clifton Center. Again, we hired about 120 people again to come and work for us and help us scan these documents. A lot of the same people that worked for us the summer 2012 wanted to come back and learn it and helped us scan over the summer. The really cool thing about that is with the people that were helping us, they would help me help their teachers on the campus show them how to do it. We still required them to come to training, therefore they really got the meat of how it's done. But at the same time, they were helping me, support me, and training and doing all the scanning at the campus level. So in our Clifton Center here, we have about 30 computers and scanners that we had set up for everybody to do all the work. And I think it took us a month and a half for both summers, you're right, to get everything complete. Okay, here's a picture of Cari setting up our software and everything. Okay, starting the fall of 2013. In 2012-13, only elementary teachers and specialists were scanning their documents into Laserfiche. After we scanned all the folders summer 13 for secondary, school year 13-14, everybody was scanning. So I was not only training all of the secondary teachers and specialists and teacher assistants, anybody who came new to elementary was having to come and get training as well. Our current implementation, we're fully implemented for all active students. We're, again, like I said a few minutes ago, we're back scanning those student folders if their folders were inactive at the time we started our scanning. We have an automatic retention as students become inactive. We integrate with Teams and SEEDS, okay? And we do a lot of SAS queries, okay, of our metadata.
All right. Yeah, in our student information system, we're using a product called Teams by ProLogic. As I mentioned, SEEDS is our homegrown system. What I might say about Teams, Laserfiche, on the workflow part of it, Jimmy has it set so that when folders are moved, we set up our folder structure. Students are moving within our district all the time, come in and out and so forth. It's tied to our information system, and it's not exactly in real time. We do as a batch process overnight, so when a student withdraws or enrolls at a school, we see them in Laserfiche the next day. With SEEDS, SEEDS integrates in real time with Laserfiche as well as with Teams and everything. With the scanning and retrieving information, the documents for special education, we've got information where they're scanned in there now. We did the back scanning to save the teachers the time. We didn't want to put that on, that responsibility on them when they're busy teaching classes and doing other things. And if I make a mistake and say, or slip up and say ARD, I want to let you know that in Texas, we're different than all the other states. We just like to be different. They all the other states call it IEP team, okay? In Texas, we call it ARD committee. It stands for Admission Review Dismissal. So if I say ARD, please know that I'm talking about the IEP team. So in our meetings and everything, everything is handled in real time through SEEDS. And SEEDS now, like I said, handles all of our required documents that we generate ourselves. But we didn't have, the first year when we first rolled it out, we were printing out in paper and then going to the scanner and scanning it into Laserfiche. We've been evolving where now, out of 60-some documents in SEEDS, we have 18 of them that will write automatically to Laserfiche. That's one of the great things about Laserfiche. It can integrate well with our system. And so when they file a document, they finalize it and file it in SEEDS, they don't have to go and print it out and scan it. It's automatically sent to Laserfiche, the document and everything. We're moving more and more. I'm hoping in another year that all of our documents in SEEDS will be handled that way. But it's an ongoing process. We just started forms. In fact, last week we launched it for the first time, and we created a form for all the documents that come in from outside SEEDS. In other words, like a parent brings in a report from their private therapist, and we need to get into the system. They were going through the client before. Well, the client is gone as of the 1st of this month. And so now they have a form that they can upload it. But we wanted to go one step further. But before I get into that, let me go in terms of our folder setups. And Cari, you may be able to help me a little bit on the folders. As I mentioned, we set up our folders, and we have them by active and inactive groups, basically. Within our active, we then have by the campus. And then under that, we have our audit folders, and within that, the student folders. Okay, those when we scan a document, it'll automatically find where the folder is based upon the information, our student information system. So that's part of the metadata that doesn't have to be entered in by the user. From the forms document, the Laserfiche forms, we then built an alternative way that they could also scan in, and it would save them a little bit of time, because we were all trying to make it more efficient so that teachers are spending less time working with paperwork and being able to spend more time working with students. And so we were able to set up a link within our SEEDS system. So a teacher, for example, logs into SEEDS. It's authenticated and everything. They have certain security rights and limitations as to what they can do and see. And then they go to search for a student, and they go to a student's, we call it a table of forms, all the different kinds of forms you can use and everything. So from the top of that page, they have a link that says Laserfiche document uploads. Okay, we've already got the user's information. We've got the student information because they've selected the student they're going to be working for. So we put that information in a token to pass on. All they have to do is click on that link, and they have to select the document type and the date of the report, and then they browse to find where that image is, that scanned image, to upload. And then they upload it. So they click, upload, and they get confirmations that it's been uploaded. That's it. So there's just a few keystrokes. So it saves them even more time than we do if they go to the Laserfiche form. But they can still have that option of going to the Laserfiche form. This is another way it's expedited to help save them, because they're already in SEEDS. If they're not in SEEDS, they can go straight to the Laserfiche form and do that. And a workflow, it's really fairly simple. We capture, like I say, the information, we upload, and it stores it to Laserfiche. Our benefits. We had a lot of people who were kind of questioning, I don't know if this is going to help. It's going to be more technology. It's going to slow us down. We're going to have to do more with that. It's going to take more time, not less time. And gradually, as they see this roll out and the changes take place, they're seeing that they're saving more time. We just received an email the other day after rolling this first thing out about the new upload thing. She titled it in the subject line, Heaven. She says, I am in Laserfiche heaven. Even so-and-so, who's a teacher who hates technology and everything, says, even so-and-so loves scanning now. So they're awesome. Finding that they're having instant access to records. We had to teach them how to use web access, and we're now teaching them how to use the Laserfiche web access. And now we're teaching them how to use Laserfiche web link, which is even a little bit of a learning curve for me, just getting used to it. Not so much a learning curve, but just making that shift over to a little different interface. But they're finding that they can access information in real time they didn't have access before. For example, when an evaluator finishes their full evaluation of a student, they would have to wait, either it would be delivered through school mail, or the one day a week that evaluator was on that campus could hand it to them. Well, now, as soon as the evaluator finishes their report, it's filed in SEEDS, it's uploaded, and SEEDS uploads it files it in Laserfiche, and they've got immediate access to that information. And when a student, moves from one campus to another within the district, they're able to have all that student information there, not just what was generated in SEEDS, which they could see before, but they see all the documents, that's in the whole student folder right there. We've, my own SEMS clerks, and SEMS stands for Special Education Management System. We handle the records requests. Before they were entering in, back 20 years ago, paper documents come in, they'd enter information from the paper documents into the mainframe, go into our student system, so forth. We were always behind. Now it's primarily records requests from other districts, from disability determination services and so forth. They were real skeptical at first when I said, we're going to be going totally digital. You're not going to have hard folders to work with when you get records requests. And they thought it was going to take longer. They love it now. We get a records request, they just go into Laserfiche. Within a minute or two, they've got all the records there and it's on its way. So we've saved a lot of time, we've saved a lot of physical handling of records. Teachers, they're be able, they've saved time. Support staff have saved time and so forth. And so where we're headed next, got a little bit ahead here. But we're headed next in terms of special education is for our forms, since we've got SEEDS already, we're different than a lot of other situations perhaps, is SEEDS handles most of our needs in terms of special education, and especially now it's interfacing with Laserfiche. But there's a whole other side that's not student record based. A lot of our business process. In other words, when we're getting information, we're sending out a form for principals to fill out. When we're trying to look at staffing levels, or when we're trying to look at where best to, what our needs are for centralized programs and where to locate them and so forth. We're sending out information to campuses still in paper forms, or maybe electronic form, but it's not Laserfiche and has no workflow attached to it. When we hire new staff, we're still making that approval file. We have 6 signatures we've got to get. We're still hand carrying that, or it's going through school mail or email. There's no workflow part. So for special education, what our emphasis is going to be on going forward here is with the forms, using that to work for those non-student records-based business processes. And then other areas, Cari, you want to talk about
Sure.
what we're going there?
I think I've got a couple more minutes, Linda. Okay, before Q&A. Before I move on, I want to just ask, is anybody in here from Los Angeles Unified School District? That's a huge district. Nobody's in here from, but 10 times our size. I know because I was a special ed teacher there, and that dungeon I showed you, that's kind of what their offices, the central offices look like. I don't know if anybody's been down there, and I haven't in about 20 years, but hopefully Laserfiche is going to help there too. New Horizons, we're excited. This is, it was hard going through this, and right now, we still are. We have a lot to learn about WebLink, about forms. Currently, our forms that we've delivered on January 5th are simply, very simple. They're just coming into Laserfiche, and then the current workflow that we were already using is picking up and still doing, what it would do before. So we have a lot to learn, but we're excited because of the web-based functionality, the training that Linda described, those 30 scanners and computers, it was hard to find a lab. Even sitting over in my office in the technology building, I couldn't get a lab. Nobody wanted to leave the scanners and the computers there. They wanted our labs to not have that stuff left there. And we needed that because we had to teach scanning. We had to teach setting up the scanning window. And that scanning window, although great, is what most of our error messages that we get called in for on the support calls. So this is great. That's going to eliminate some of that. It's going to allow training. I just trained 6 sessions last Thursday, and back to back with 30 people in each session, no computers, no scanners. I was just able to show them this stuff, and we have positive feedback. And that was not the special ed. That was all your bookkeepers. We'll get positive feedback from them. We have gotten some, but there's some kinks we're working out. Forms used to populate the template. That's because, again, we're already set up. So that's just going to come in and roll into the workflow and processes we already have set up. Moving forward, we'll make use of forms and learn and be able to understand, what can we do with forms business process and where does that meet workflow, and then come into workflow. All of it going into Laserfiche. Scanning process improved. Now, since most users are going to be not using the Laserfiche client, they're just going to use their scanner, and they'll use Adobe, maybe Capture Perfect. We've given them some options, and we've also, given them the option on the current scanners that we purchased, which were Canons. There's a green button on them. They really want to use that, so we gave them those options too. And then they'll just be able to upload or drag that file onto the form. That's great. And then we're moving on to developing more complex forms with complex business processes and workflows from forms. So our travel request authorization has a lot involved in it, a lot of approvals. We're figuring that out right now. We were using LDAP, now we've moved to Windows authentication. We use Active Directory. We're an Oracle client. We've got some challenges that are not your main client, your main Windows client. So all of that stuff we're working out with our database, our DBA, our programmers. There's 2 programmers, the whole programming team that works with SEEDS on special ed. Just really smart people that we have in-house. Okay, and then automated routing through management and financial approval processes. That's the difficulty we're looking at right now. So we're challenged, but we like a challenge, and so we'll get through that, and this will be our next. The travel request authorization will be our next form to go live. Those are 2 forms actually. Okay, and New Horizons, we've got HR is just chomping at the bit, and they've got hundreds of documents. Our HR department is fully in Laserfiche, and so when new teacher hires come, they take down a scanning station, which would be a laptop and a scanner, and they set up 5 of those in the boardroom, and they have lines of teachers that just sit down with them, and so they're right there with Laserfiche right now. Yeah, so that's a great thing, but we're going to be able to move some of that to forms, so that'll be even better. Multiple forms that involve multiple approvals, and then moving all current departments to forms. I mentioned that earlier, that we only have 200 full user license, so we're eager to move some of those 24 departments that maybe they're only scanning once or twice a year, moving them into a non-license and a forms tool, which will be easier for them and slicker. I've used that word 3 times this morning. I must like it. But it is slick. And, okay, so more integration, special education leveling. I think Mike mentioned this, but doing more with the forms tool for special ed outside of their ARD paperwork. So leveling is basically, and I may say this wrong, but the way I see it is getting your students into a classroom and leveling those. So by October 31st, that's our snapshot day, we need to have everybody in their classes so it's all accounted for. So none of this, a student's not enrolled yet. So that's on the burden of the campus enrollment clerks, but the whole district works off of that. So getting reports through forms on leveling. And financial journal entries, that's just to name one. Our finance department actually squeezed in 2 extra forms right before go live. Huge urban district, and we have 10 plus programs that students may be involved in, and those service providers need access to those records, yet they may not be have access. For the most part, they're usually an employee, but they may be an auxiliary employee. So that data comes through scanning into Laserfiche. The metadata is then out on the database and then can be pulled into the student data parent piece and provide those people's access. So normally it would be a parent, but also these other service providers are kind of wearing the role of parent so that they can have access to that student data. We're working, we went live with that this year, and that came about through a whole different, somebody else in technology going, oh, Laserfiche can do that. And we're over here, what? And so we're okay, well, let's see what we can do. And a lot of times we don't know if Laserfiche is the best thing for that, but somebody else has kind of determined it has, and they're marching forward. So, we try to make those decisions and help them out. And in this case, it's been good, and we've got a couple of things we'll still work out on the data end. Family Resource Center, the last bullet on this slide, that's another one where once the data has come in from a scanned document and the metadata on the template, the data is then exported. So taking data from Laserfiche, exporting it out, and then using it again in another way. I guess you could call that reverse integration. And with that said, we're open for questions. And I'm going to leave this slide. I think that's, yeah.
Linda has a microphone up here. We want to be sure and capture everyone's questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll come see you.
Okay, I have a lot of questions, but I'll limit it. So how are your teachers scanning? Have you put those scanners in the classroom? And secondly, what is the quality of those scans? Are you checking that?
What we did is, on our first implementation, is Cari went out to all the campuses and we installed on one computer at the elementary level at every school, along with one scanner. So that was available for anybody who needed to scan into Laserfiche Client at that campus. We did the same thing the following summer for the secondary schools, but with the secondary schools having more students, we put 2 applications on 2 computers with 2 scanners. A lot of times the scanners were busy, and so a lot of the specialists sometimes would come to my office where I had a lab of 8 computers and scanners because they couldn't get to that scanner. Maybe they put it in the yard room or something and it was always busy. So a lot of the service providers would come to our office and help scan. So it was just basically 1 or 2 computers at that campus level is where they did their scanning.
Then we also had a number of campuses that would convert their copiers that had scanning capabilities to scan that way. And there were a lot of other scanners that were on campuses, but they weren't tied to the client. As it is now, we don't require the client. We have done training. Linda has done training on Adobe Acrobat and how to scan through that. That's the preferred thing. We have an enterprise license for that. So that's typically how they will scan to a PDF now, and they would have it somewhere where they would be able to retrieve it. So when they go in the application now to upload, and it says browse, they just go to the location where that scanned document is that they scan through Adobe Acrobat. But there's also a lot of our systems generate PDFs automatically, so they don't have to scan all the documents.
So the quality?
So I can probably take that one. So the quality, we'll usually get phone calls. You guys, the SIMS team monitors to, spot checks and did in the beginning and I believe still spot checks. But also we'll get phone calls. We have a help desk and a desktop support team, and there's campus desktop support techs out there. So that's another 2 groups that I train. I try to keep them updated on Laserfiche because that really helps me to not have to take all those support calls because I have groups that can do that. I would say the quality, the issues that we've come in is sometimes we'll get a skewed document or an inverted black and white, but we do everything in TIFF. Okay, so that's been our mantra. I've seen a lot here, and I don't know if we'll move into having native format documents, but as far as those, the quality's been good. Human resources was a little bit more where we had to apply some grayscale and color because the documents were so old, and so we needed we needed to allow that. But we try to do black and white TIFF images really the way our VAR guided us to set it up in the beginning.
Also, for quality assurance, in terms of our special ed documents through SEEDS that's uploaded through there, we build into the process, when you browse, you upload it through there, you then have to view the document. So you get, then right away know if it's a successful scan or not. So there's quality assurance built from that side of it.
I have two questions for you guys. The amount of money that you spent using staff, because I love the idea, because in effect, staff scanning gets them comfortable with the process. They know the documents,
Right.
and I think it's a much better way to go than sending the documents out and having them scanned and have them come back. Okay. So my big issue in trying to sell this process is the cost of the teacher and special ed salaries. How did you pay them anything different, or do you have contracts with your teachers, or how did you negotiate that?
Okay, we had, well, our HR sets up summer pay rates for professionals and for classified staff. And we knew at the beginning, because of the complex nature of special education documents, we needed someone who was familiar with special education records to do the scanning. So we didn't contract with just anybody. In the summer, we have a lot of staff that are off, so that's why we selected the summer to do it. As far as the funding, we had a technology bond fund, and so that we used the money from that bond fund to pay the summer staff. And we had about 36 people each summer that we paid for the scanning. I can't remember the exact dollar amounts. Cari, do you remember what Mark spent?
I don't know the exact dollar amounts,
Yeah.
but it would be 30 people times $10 to $15 a day, 8 hours a day for about 6 weeks. So I don't have those calculations, but that's about how much. And we still have some money in our bond funds. The scanners are also paid for that. Now, there was different departments, such as HR, that they just went forward and hired their own temps. And we're probably moving into that as that bond, as we get further along and it's not so much a bond project. But we did have those funds available.
And then my last question, did you guys use, I know you used workflow, but did you use quick fields in terms of analyzing documents to automatically pass them where they need to go in Laserfiche?
We considered it. The problem is that with our documents, it's not so much our in-house documents, but we get so much from other districts. We adopt records from the district next door or even the next state and everything. So we couldn't set up those quick fields to quickly scan. It was just much easier to simply get it scanned in and type in the metadata ourselves. And like I say, once the back scanning was done, the rest of it's been much easier. SEEDS handles most of the metadata and everything that goes with it and files it directly to Laserfiche in most cases. Like I said, we have about 60-some documents. 18 of them now are writing straight to Laserfiche through SEEDS, so you don't have to enter in any metadata. We're going to be, we're still continuing to rewrite our SEEDS application so it'll handle more of that integration with Laserfiche. That's a big time saver for us.
And then my last question, is your staff doing all of the I would say, composing of the workflows, and have you kind of become educated to the point where you're handling that now on your own? You're kind of self-sufficient.
No, we're not.
Okay.
We're just getting started. Like I said, we just started with
Okay.
the Laserfiche forms. Jimmy, he's really the brains, and he's the workhorse here. What we're doing is Linda and I are learning forms and the workflow. And what we plan to do is on our development or installation of Laserfiche, we will design the form. And I think we're comfortable with doing that part of it. And then we will draft the workflow, but we're going to be relying on Jimmy heavily to do the fine tuning of the workflow. And then we'll test it in our development installation and then roll it out.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We've learned that necessity is the mother of learning.
Yes.
And we haven't always had the luxury of having someone with that kind of a background. And it really is something that with a project like that, you can actually learn it. So I encourage you.
Thank
Stre-
you. Thank you.
Stretch a little bit,
That's
okay?
that last question's a really good one, and that's kind of one of my takeaways from this conference is to kind of go back and we do have an open position because we need some help, and then also the ability of somebody like myself who's heavily involved in all this but doesn't come from a programming background, and to step off and not step on toes, but at the same time step off and try to take on some of that. Because I hear from some of you guys that it's not that hard. So learning more learning more workflow, and definitely diving into the business process of the forms tool.
I believe we have time for one or two more questions.
Do you feel at some point that you might replace SEEDS with the forms?
I can't quite hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm saying, do you feel at some point that perhaps forms and workflow might be able to replace SEEDS?
That's down the road. I have some thoughts about what forms we may be more efficient to use Laserfiche forms with as opposed to the SEEDS document part of it. But SEEDS is working well for us. Where we feel we have our greatest need is for the non-student-based records business processes, because we're spending a lot of time tracking down requests for information from campuses and handling paperwork and typing into a spreadsheet or a database information that's very staff intensive yet. And if we can address those needs first, I think that would be more cost effective for our department. But down the road, we will definitely be looking at those, the process that we have in SEEDS that may be better to move over to Laserfiche forms. I don't see it going fully over there at this point, but who knows down the road, 5-10 years from now.
Well, with that said, we are out of time, but I'm sure that the awesome Austin ISD team will be here to answer additional questions you may have. And before that, let's give them another round of applause. Good job, fantastic work. Thank you.